Welcome and thank you for tuning into A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM with Lindsay, Manisha, Nilafar, Sanas, and Kristen. We are fourth-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing students at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo.
We are working to demystify health issues affecting our community, bringing you evidence-based information about our healthcare. This information is for educational purposes only and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare provider.
We'd like to start our show by acknowledging and thanking the Coast Salish people whose unceded territory we have the opportunity to live, learn, and share educational experiences on.
Today's show is Catching Up with Your Checkups. We are going to be discussing routine health maintenance. Some topics we are covering today are yearly checkups, routine cancer screening, physical activity, nutrition, and safe antibiotic use. First up is Kristen, who will tell us a little bit about yearly checkups. Take us away, Kristen.
Yeah, of course. So thank you for having me here, Lindsay. I'm glad to be here with you again, back in this new season there. So did you know that you may not need to go for an annual checkup?
Oh, no?
No. So if you're like me and thought you needed to go for an annual checkup, because that's just the way I've always been, with your physician or healthcare provider, you just may not. Okay, research suggests that those that went for periodical health checkups had the same health outcomes as those that went yearly. The Canadian Task Force on Preventative Measures has even been suggesting this since as early as 1979.
Oh, who is this task force?
So this is actually, I found about this, even though it's been around since 1979. But they actually were established in 1976. And so the Canadian Task Force on Preventive Health was established by the Public Health Agency of Canada. And it basically was there to develop clinical practice guidelines that support primary healthcare providers in delivering preventive health to me and you there.
I guess now I know.
Yeah. So it was they that suggested we start thinking of health checkups in terms of our age, risk factors, and specific test intervals. And also, HealthLink BC has some information around what screening tests you should be doing and inquiring about during specific milestones, pretty much from birth until your older years. And we'll be sure to post this link on our Facebook page for you to check out later after the show.
Oh, great.
Mm-hmm. Now, it should be mentioned for most individuals who are otherwise healthy and not dealing with chronic conditions in this case. What I do like, and I'm seeing a big shift in today's medical model, is that now this is more discussion and agreement between the healthcare professionals and the individuals around more patient-centered care than just, checking off all those little ticky boxes. And if you're like me, when I was younger, going to the doctor's office with your family, checking out, body mass index, checking that off. So it's now kind of more towards, what age you're at, kind of what roughly we should be seeing in terms of our growth and development at this stage of life there, and then kind of starting to think about any family history that we need to kind of be aware of. Like for me personally, I do have a history of type 2 diabetes in my family, so that'll kind of be something that I'll need to start looking at and focus on a bit later on in life there.
So it's more of a personalized approach, and you should have a discussion with your doctor then.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of building onto that from this mindset, when I first came here to the island to go to school here, because I'm originally from Alberta there, I set up an appointment with the school clinic, which is a great resource for those that don't have a primary health care provider and are VIU students here. So I did my initial meeting with a nurse practitioner, and I made a comment about seeing them next year. It was then that they commented back that, no, they don't necessarily need to see me. So I was kind of like, what do you mean you don't need to see me? Like, you don't care about my health? So that was kind of my initial gut reaction there. But kind of as I kind of went through the program, kind of started learning more and about this, it made sense because, why do you want to go through all these preventive measures and kind of, give yourself more blood tests, all that, if you don't necessarily need to. It's kind of, the whole harm versus good aspect of it.
Why, that's fantastic to hear. I think it saves a lot of time for those of us with a busy schedule anyways.
Yeah. So basically I didn't have any apparent health issues at the time. So basically my physical health was good. I was pretty good in my mental, emotional health there. And at the time, I had my same monogamous partner, so I didn't have to worry about kind of any STIs. And I had a PAP within the last 3 years. So kind of overall health-wise, I was kind of in a good, healthy position there.
That's great. Speaking of pap tests, we're going to be coming up with that here shortly. But first, we do have a nugget about the newborn metabolic screening.
Did you know that there are many conditions that are screened for right after you were born? This is called the newborn metabolic screening and involves taking a sample of blood from the baby's heel called a heel stick. This small amount of blood can help screen for congenital hypothyroidism, cystic fibrosis, MCAD, phenylketonuria or PKU, and congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and many others. Early detection of these disorders can minimize the complications of these diseases. If you're pregnant or expecting, be sure to talk to your physician about these newborn screening tests today. For those just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM. Up next, we're going to discuss cancer screening with Lindsay there.
In adulthood, it is recommended by the BC Cancer Agency that we get routinely screened for cervical, breast, and colon cancer. Each screening comes with their own test and set of guidelines. You can find more information on cancer screening on the BC Cancer Agency's website at bccancer.bc.ca or simply by talking to your healthcare provider. So first, I'm going to talk about cervical cancer screening. People with the cervix between the ages of 25 to 69 should be screened for cervical cancer every 3 years. Cervical cancer screening can stop at age 69 if your results have always been normal. Ask your healthcare provider if you should still be tested. You should still screen regularly for cervical cancer if you've been through menopause, you've had only one sexual partner or have been with the same partner for a while, you've had the HPV vaccine, you're in a same-sex relationship, or you're a transgender individual with a cervix. So what does screening look like? Cervical cancer screening or a pap test can be done by a doctor, nurse practitioner, registered nurse, midwife, or naturopathic doctor at their office or clinic. For the test, you will need to undress from the waist down. You will be provided with a gown or a sheet to cover up. Then lay down on the medical table and put your feet up. When you're comfortable, the healthcare provider will gently insert an instrument called a speculum so they can see your cervix. Next, the healthcare provider will use a small spatula or brush to collect some cells from your cervix. Cervix screening is not usually painful but can be uncomfortable. The sample then goes to a lab to be examined. Your results will be sent to your healthcare provider. If there are any abnormal cells present, your healthcare provider will contact you. An abnormal result does not necessarily mean that you have cancer. However, it is important to attend all follow-up appointments. To get screened for cervical cancer, call your healthcare provider or find a suitable clinic by visiting the clinic locator on bccancer.bc.ca. So why even get screened for cervical cancer? The pap test can find abnormal cells in the cervix before they become cancer. If these abnormal cells are found and treated early, cervical cancer can be stopped from developing. Screening can also identify cancer at an early age before it can cause symptoms. If cervical cancer is caught at its earliest stage, the chance of survival is more than 85%. Cervical cancer usually has no symptoms, but some symptoms may include abnormal vaginal bleeding, such as bleeding in between periods, bleeding during or after sex or after menopause, abnormal or persistent vaginal discharge or pelvic pain or pain during intercourse. If you experience any of these symptoms, go see your healthcare provider. So I've also found this video that I'd like to share with you. So this is Marian's story from bccancer.bc.ca.
A typical day in my life is pretty busy. I have my 5-year-old son And then I come up to UNBC. I'm completing a public administration and community development program with a minor in First Nation Studies. I'm working at the Northern Women's Center. I'm also on Senate at UNBC. When I'm out on the lake in the kayak, I can just be myself. I don't have to think about being a student, being a leader, being a mom. I can just be me. I can focus on the stories about the land and focus on being in my community, in place now. Being in my kayak, I can just be Nekazewaten. I have a lot of responsibilities for my son, my community, my schooling, my education. I wouldn't be able to participate as well if I wasn't healthy. Getting regular PAPs is important. I started getting screenings because I was told that they're necessary. It was just something it seemed that you do when you're a woman. You take care of your body, you take care of your spirituality, you take care of your emotions. I think a lot of Indigenous women have mistrust of the medical system, but also just doctors in general. There's also this fear of getting PAP because a lot of Indigenous women have suffered sexual assaults, rapes, just a lot of intergenerational trauma. The UN definition of genocide includes measures to prevent births. Growing up, I was always told stories by my sisters and my family members about forced sterilizations that happened from the medical industry. I initially felt very scared. It took a long time for me to go back to the doctor. After the procedure, I thought it was important to write my doctor a letter about my experiences with intergenerational trauma and the procedure that I had. Once I wrote her the letter, she had asked if she could take a snippet of it and bring it to her students to share how intergenerational trauma affects the process of women getting the health care they need. Healthcare providers should understand how intergenerational trauma impacts Indigenous people's health. I think health is important to my future because of my son. He's a very important part of my life and he's my family. Making sure that I'm healthy for him is really important. It's important for life givers and two-spirit people to get regular PAP tests. They can detect irregularities sooner before it becomes cancer. It's important to make screening a regular part of your life.
That was Marion's story, which you can find on bccancer.bc.ca. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM. This is Lindsay, and we're going to talk about breast cancer screening. So who should get screened for breast cancer and how often? This is a more complicated list than the cervical cancer screening because it depends on your age. People assigned female at birth with breasts under the age of 40 are not recommended to get screening mammograms unless you have a known BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation, prior chest wall radiation, or a strong family history of breast cancer. In this case, a referral is needed for every screen. Aged 40 to 74 with a first-degree relative, such as a mother or sister with breast cancer, the BC Cancer Agency recommends that you get a mammogram every year, as those with a family history of breast cancer are almost 2 times more likely to develop breast cancer. A referral is not needed in this case. If you are 40 to 49 without a family linked to breast cancer, you are encouraged to talk to your healthcare provider about the benefits and limitations of mammography. If you and your healthcare provider decide to go for screening mammography, it is available every 2 years and a referral is not needed but is recommended. Aged 50 to 74, it is recommended that you get a mammogram every 2 years. In this age group, the benefits of screening mammograms clearly outweigh the limitations. A referral is not needed to book a mammogram. Past the age of 75, you're encouraged to talk to your healthcare provider about the benefits and limitations of mammography. If screening mammography is chosen, it is available every 2 to 3 years. A referral is not needed, but it is recommended. You are not eligible for screening mammogram if you have breast implants because you'll need to see your healthcare provider to arrange for a different type of mammogram. If you are breastfeeding or pregnant, but you can use the breast screening program 3 months after completely finishing breastfeeding. So see your healthcare provider immediately if you experience any new problems. You're not eligible either if you have a previous history of breast cancer or have any new breast complaints such as a lump or nipple discharge. See your healthcare provider immediately if you experience any new problems. And lastly, if you have had a mammogram on both breasts in the last 12 months, because you have to wait at least 1 year before having another screening mammogram. So to prepare for your appointment, make sure not to use any deodorant that day or powder or creams or lotions on the day of your appointment. These products leave a residue that can make it difficult to read your mammogram. Before the exam, you will be asked to undress from the waist up. If you wish, you can wear a shirt that buttons in the front to keep one side covered at a time during the exam. Try to schedule an appointment when your breasts are least sensitive, for example, within 10 days of your last period. Some also find it helpful to avoid caffeine several days before the exam. This is also a scent-free environment, so please don't wear perfume. During the exam, a technologist will ask to measure your height and weight before your mammogram, which will be documented on your confidential history form as well as other questions pertaining to your breast health. The technologist will then proceed to the mammogram examination where she will place your breast on a special X-ray machine. A plastic plate will be pressed slowly to compress your breast and hold it in place for a few seconds. You'll feel some pressure on your breast for a few seconds during the X-ray. Compression is necessary to spread the tissue and eliminate motion, which may blur the picture. This may be uncomfortable and usually lasts no more than 10 seconds. Let your technologist know if you experience any pain, as they will work with you to make your appointment more comfortable. 4 pictures are taken, 2 of each breast. The technologist will check the pictures to make sure they are good quality for the radiologist to read. If needed, the technologist may need to take some additional pictures. If you do notice any new changes in your breast, such as a lump or nipple discharge, see your healthcare provider immediately. Your healthcare provider will help you determine if further testing is required. If your healthcare provider decides that you need testing, you will be booked for an appointment at a diagnostic imaging office and you will need to be seen very quickly. This process is different than regular breast screening, which is done with people who have no breast concerns or symptoms. The BC Cancer Agency does suggest 5 things that you can do to drastically reduce the risk for breast cancer. They are: maintain a healthy body weight, maintain an active lifestyle, limit alcohol intake, breastfeed if you have the opportunity to and are able to, and weigh the risk of hormone therapy for menopause symptoms. For both cervical and breast cancer screening, you can find all this information and more through the BC Cancer Agency online at www.bccancer.bc.ca or by talking to your healthcare provider. They also have some awesome clinic locators to make it easier for you to find a clinic to book your screening. So then what about colon cancer screening? Well, I found this great video through BC Cancer Agency online at bccancer.bc.ca that gives great information on the process of colon cancer screening. So here it is.
Screening for colon cancer. Fecal immunochemical test. FIT. Men and women ages 50 to 74 should be screened regularly for colon cancer. Screening is only recommended for people who are not experiencing symptoms. Colon cancer screening can find abnormal cells before they turn into cancer. By finding and removing these cells early, it's possible to stop cancer from developing. There are 2 different tests available: the fecal immunochemical test, also known as FIT, and colonoscopy. Talk to your doctor about which test is right for you. Most British Columbians are screened using FIT. FIT is a test that can detect hidden blood in the stool. FIT is simple and can be done in your home. With an order form from your doctor, you will be able to pick up a free FIT kit from a medical lab. No special prep is necessary. You may eat as usual and take your medications. Just follow the simple instructions included in the kit. Put the tissue paper on the toilet to collect the stool sample, open the cap, and collect the sample. You only need a tiny bit. Then put the stick back into the bottle and put the top on. Flush and wash your hands, then put the bottle into the Ziploc bag. Store the sample in the fridge, but not the freezer, until the sample is returned to the lab. Do not allow the sample to freeze or become too hot. Make sure to return the sample within the number of days indicated on the instruction sheet, or else the sample may no longer be valid. Your results will be sent to you and your doctor. An abnormal FIT result means that blood was found in the stool that you submitted. This does not mean that you have cancer. Blood can be present in the stool for many different reasons, including hemorrhoids, ulcers, anal fissures, or inflammation. More than 96% of people with an abnormal result do not have cancer. However, it is very important to attend follow-up appointments to find out why the test was abnormal. If colon cancer is detected at its earliest stage, the chance of survival is more than 90%. To get a FIT order form, talk to your doctor or go to a walk-in clinic. If you have any concerns or questions, please contact your doctor or visit our website at screeningbc.ca.
That was Screening for Your Colon Cancer Fecal Immunochemical Test, published by Screening BC. You can also find more information about colon cancer screening and the FIT test on bccancer.bc.ca and healthlinkbc.ca, or simply by talking to your healthcare provider. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM. This is Catching Up with Your Checkups. Next up, Manisha is going to tell us about appropriate antibiotic use.
Hi, this is Manisha, and I'm going to talk about antibiotic resistance. Have you ever been on antibiotics? I'm sure you have. Do you know about antibiotics resistance? Let me explain from the beginning. Antibiotics are the medicines that are used to prevent and treat bacterial infections. According to World Health Organization, antibiotic resistance occurs when bacteria changes in response to the use of these medicines. So it's the bacteria that becomes antibiotic resistant, not the humans or animals. It basically occurs because bacteria mutates or changes over the course of time. Some of the reasons for this resistance includes overprescription of antibiotics, patients not finishing the entire antibiotic course, overuse of antibiotics in livestock and fish farming, poor infection control in healthcare settings, poor hygiene and sanitation, and absence of new antibiotics being discovered. So what can we do to prevent and control this issue? At an individual level, we can only use antibiotics when prescribed by a certified health professional. Never demand antibiotics if your health worker says you don't need them. Always follow your healthcare professional's advice when using antibiotics. Never share or use leftover antibiotics. Prevent infections by regularly washing hands, avoiding close contact with sick people, practicing safer sex, and keeping vaccinations up to date. And at last, prepare your food hygienically and choose the foods that have been produced without the use of antibiotics. To dig deeper in this topic, I'm going to present to you a TED Talk by Marion McKenna, which is called What Do We Do When Antibiotics Don't Work Anymore? It's also available on YouTube. Here you go.
This is my great uncle. Family history says he loved being a fireman, and so in 1938, on one of his days off at the firehouse, one of the fire hose nozzles, a giant, heavy piece of metal, toppled off a shelf and hit him. A few days later, his shoulders started to hurt. 2 days after that, he spiked a fever. The fever climbed and climbed. They flagged down a cab and took him to the hospital. The nurses there recognized right away that he had an infection, what at the time they would have called blood poisoning. There was nothing they could do because the things we use now to cure infections didn't exist yet. The first test of penicillin, the first antibiotic, was 3 years in the future. People who got infections either recovered, if they were lucky, or they died. My great-uncle was not lucky. He was in the hospital for a week, shaking with chills, dehydrated and delirious, sinking into a coma as his organs failed. Nothing worked. He died. He was 30 years old. If you look back through history, most people died the way my great-uncle died. Most people didn't die of cancer or heart disease, the lifestyle diseases that afflict us in the West today. They didn't die of those diseases because they didn't live long enough to develop them. They died of injuries, being gored by an ox, shot on a battlefield, crushed in one of the new factories of the Industrial Revolution, and most of the time from infection, which finished what those injuries began. All of that changed when antibiotics arrived. Suddenly, infections that had been a death sentence became something you recovered from in days. And ever since, we have been living inside the golden epoch of the miracle drugs. And now, we are coming to an end of it. My great-uncle died in the last days of the pre-antibiotic era. We stand today on the threshold of the post-antibiotic era, in the earliest days of a time when simple infections, such as the one Joe had, will kill people once again. In fact, they already are. People are dying of infections again because of a phenomenon called antibiotic resistance. Briefly, it works like this. Bacteria compete against each other for resources, for food, by manufacturing lethal compounds that they direct against each other. Other bacteria, to protect themselves, evolve defenses against that chemical attack. When we first made antibiotics, we took those compounds into the lab and made our own versions of them. And bacteria responded to our attack the way they always had. Penicillin was distributed in 1943, and widespread penicillin resistance arrived by 1945. For 70 years, we played a game of leapfrog, our drug and their resistance, and then another drug, and then resistance again. And now the game is ending. So there are infections moving across the world for which, out of the more than 100 antibiotics available on the market, 2 drugs might work, or 1 drug, or none. It would be natural to hope that these infections are extraordinary cases. But in fact, in the United States and Europe, 50,000 people a year die of infections which no drugs can help. A project chartered by the British government, known as the Review on Antimicrobial Resistance, estimates that the worldwide toll right now is 700,000 deaths a year. And yet, the chances are good that you don't feel at risk, that you imagine these people were hospital patients in intensive care units or nursing home residents near the ends of their lives. What you didn't think about, none of us do, is that antibiotics support almost all of modern life. If we lost antibiotics, here's what else we'd lose. First, any protection for people with weakened immune systems, cancer patients, AIDS patients, transplant recipients, premature babies. Next, any treatment that installs foreign objects in the body, stents for stroke, pumps for diabetes, dialysis, joint replacements. How many athletic baby boomers need new hips and knees? A recent study estimates that without antibiotics, 1 out of every 6 would die. Next, we'd probably lose surgery. Many operations are preceded by prophylactic doses of antibiotics. Without that protection, we'd lose the ability to open the hidden spaces of the body. So, no heart operations, no prostate biopsies, no cesarean sections. We'd have to learn to fear infections that now seem minor. Strep throat used to cause heart failure. Skin infections led to amputations. Giving birth killed in the cleanest hospitals almost 1 woman out of every 100. Pneumonia took 3 children out of every 10. More than anything else, we'd lose the confident way we live our everyday lives. That British project I mentioned also predicts that if we can't get this under control, by 2050, the worldwide toll will be 10 million deaths a year. How did we get to this point, where what we have to look forward to is those terrifying numbers? The difficult answer is we did it to ourselves. Resistance is an inevitable biological process, but we bear the responsibility for accelerating it. We did this by squandering antibiotics with a heedlessness that now seems shocking. Penicillin was sold over the counter until the 1950s. In much of the developing world, most antibiotics still are. In the United States, 50% of the antibiotics given in hospitals are unnecessary, and that's just in healthcare. On much of the planet, most meat animals get antibiotics every day of their lives, not to cure illnesses, but to fatten them up and to protect them against the factory farm conditions they are raised in. In the United States, possibly 80% of the antibiotics sold every year go to farm animals, not to humans, creating resistant bacteria that move off the farm in water, in dust, in the meat the animals become. Aquaculture depends on antibiotics too, particularly in Asia, and fruit growing relies on antibiotics to protect apples, pears, citrus against disease. And because bacteria can pass their DNA to each other, like a traveler handing off a suitcase at an airport, once we have encouraged that resistance into existence, there is no knowing where it will spread. Can we avert it? There are companies working on novel antibiotics, things the superbugs have never seen before. We need those new drugs badly. And we need incentives, discovery grants, extended patents, prizes to lure other companies into making antibiotics again. But that probably won't be enough. Here's why. Bacteria birth a new generation every 20 minutes. It takes pharmaceutical chemistry 10 years to derive a new drug. Every time we use an antibiotic, we give the bacteria billions of chances to crack the codes of the defenses we've constructed. There has never yet been a drug they could not defeat. This is asymmetric warfare. But we can change the outcome. We could build systems to harvest data to tell us automatically and specifically how antibiotics are being used. We could build gatekeeping into drug order systems so that every prescription gets a second look. We could require agriculture to give up antibiotic use. We could build surveillance systems to tell us where resistance is emerging next. Those are the tech solutions. They probably aren't enough either, unless we help. Antibiotic resistance is a habit. We all know how hard it is to change a habit. But as a society, we've done that in the past. People used to toss litter into the streets, used to not wear seatbelts, used to smoke inside public buildings. We don't do those things anymore. We changed social norms. We could change social norms around antibiotic use, too. We could forego giving an antibiotic if we're not sure it's the right one. We could stop insisting on a prescription for our kids' ear infection before we're sure what caused it. We could ask every restaurant, every supermarket, where their meat comes from. We could promise each other never again to buy chicken or shrimp or fruit raised with routine antibiotic use. And if we did those things, we could slow down the arrival of the post-antibiotic world. But we have to do it soon. Penicillin began the antibiotic era in 1943. In just 70 years, we walked ourselves up to the edge of disaster. We won't get 70 years to find our way back out again. Thank you very much.
That was the TED Talk from Marin McKenna. What do we do when antibiotics don't work anymore? And you're listening to a CHLY 101.7 FM. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha, for the wonderful segment on antibiotic use and antibiotic resistance there. If you're just tuning in now, this is a Sound Constitution with the VIU Bachelors of Science nursing students with Kristen, Lindsay, Manisha, Nilafar, and Sanas. And now, listeners, it's time to pass you over to Nilafar and her information around physical activity and its effects on our physical and emotional well-being.
Thank you so much for giving us such an amazing and useful information. And my name is Nilufar, and I'm going to talk about physical activity and its tremendous effects on our physical and emotional well-being. According to the article, New Insights into the Benefits of Physical Activity, there are diseases such as diabetes mellitus, cardiovascular disease, and cancer, which are the leading causes of morbidity and mortality globally. Finding some ways to combat and treat these diseases, which are associated with aging and lifestyle, have become essential for health science researchers and policymakers. Research has shown that regular physical activity and adopting an active lifestyle are beneficial for our physical and mental health. For example, according to the Harvard Health, exercise may contribute to our physical health by promoting good circulation, which allows the cells and substances of our immune system to move through the body freely and do their job effectively. Exercise is about more than keeping in shape. It also can help with your emotional and mental health. Exercise can help you improve your self-esteem, keep your mind off problems, and give you a sense of control. In general, people who are active have less anxiety, depression, and stress than people who are not active, as it is mentioned in HealthLink BC. One of the chronic medical conditions that can create extreme dysfunction, morbidity, and mortality if left untreated is depression. Regular exercise in the form of structured exercise programs are often encouraged as a means of non-pharmaceutical treatment of depression. In an article called Effects of Increased Daily Physical Activity on Mental Health and Depression, the guideline for promoting health is to exercise a minimum of 150 minutes at moderate intensity or 75 minutes at vigorous intensity over 3 to 5 days per week. The relationship between physical activity and depression has been widely investigated, with the results indicating that increase in physical activity could be used as an alternative treatment in comparison to medication to improve mental health. According to the HealthLink BC, exercise can reduce feelings of anger, anxiety, confusion, depression, headaches, stress, and tension. Physical activity also can increase your assertiveness, being able to ask for what you need and make decisions, confidence and feelings, emotional stability. You are less troubled by life's challenges and disappointments. Your independence, memory, your positive mood, perception. You are better at noticing what's going on around you. Your positive body image. You feel good about the way that you look. Feeling of well-being and self-worth and self-esteem. You feel good about the way you see yourself. Be safe while you exercise. Moderate exercise is safe for most people, but it's a good idea to talk with your doctor before increasing your activity. Anyone with health concerns or medical conditions should also talk with a doctor before exercise. Start slowly and gradually increase how much you exercise. Stop exercising if you have severe pain, especially chest pain or severe problems breathing. Talk with your doctor about these symptoms. People who are likely to have high anxiety or panic may have an episode during exercise because of buildup of certain body chemicals such as lactic acid from exercise. If you have any problems during exercise, just talk with your doctor. Let's talk about how can we stay active and motivated. According to the HealthLink BC, being more physically active can help you feel better, deal with stress more easily, and handle day-to-day activities more comfortably. If you've already started on a fitness program, here are some things you can do to stay interested and motivated. Get support from friends, family, and coworkers. They can provide encouragement and help during difficult times. Find others to be active with, whether it's a friend, family member, or fitness group. Get instructions and encouragement from an exercise professional. Call 811 to speak to a qualified exercise professional or email Physical Activity Services. Join a club, take a class, or attend drop-in sessions at a recreation center. Try new activities and add variety and challenges to your existing activities. Set yourself new goals so your activity doesn't become boring. For instance, doing a 10-kilometer fun run or going on a biking holiday. If your activity focuses on one fitness area like running or biking, try new activities that focus on other areas like yoga or weightlifting. Try to be active every day. Doing activity at the same time each day helps it become part of your routine. Doing a program that's supervised may help you be more serious about setting aside times, and it's more fun when other people are involved. Be active in a variety of places. For instance, use stairs, park your car away from stores, and walk. Take a walking break at work. Keep refining and reviewing your goals. If you're not making progress, change your goals or actively plan. Use a physical activity diary, progress charts, or a logbook to keep track of your activity and record your achievements. Have a fitness assessment. Seeing the progress you're making can be very motivating. Focus on the benefits of being active, how much better you feel, your increased self-esteem, the enjoyment you get out of it, and the health benefits you expect. Be prepared for setbacks. Have ways to stay active during holidays or when you're busy at work or school. If you're recovering from an injury, take a break and try a new activity. For instance, switch from running to swimming. Avoid injuries by making sure your activity level is realistic. Exercise safely and make sure to do a proper warm-up and cool down. Make sure you're wearing comfortable shoes and using proper equipment. See your healthcare provider if you have a health concern. And finally, reward yourself for meeting goals and recognize your accomplishments. Thank you for listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM.
Thank you, Nilafar. Being more physically active seems just a bit easier when you factor in a couple of those tips you had at the end there. Lastly, we're going to hear from Sanaz on healthy eating and diets, and something else you may not be able to think about is the economic burden of unhealthy eating there. So be sure to stay tuned for this last little segment there.
Hello, CHLY listeners. My name is Sanaz, and today that we are discussing routine health maintenance, I'm going to talk about the importance of having a healthy diet. According to Canada's new healthy eating strategy, in Canadian Family Physician website, unhealthy eating is the leading risk for death and the second leading risk for disability in Canada. According to Global Burden of Disease study, dietary risks are estimated to have killed approximately 48,000 Canadians and resulted in over 800,000 years of disability in 2016. The economic burden of unhealthy eating in Canada is high, accounting for an estimated $13.8 billion per year. Key drivers of this unhealthy eating pattern in Canadians are increased consumptions of processed foods high in calories, salt, sugar, and saturated fat, and the lack of whole grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. For example, 75% of Canadians surpass the recommended dietary salt intake, and over half of Canadians are consuming diets above the recommended sugar and saturated fat levels. Why do you think we can't stop eating unhealthy foods? To find out, let's listen to an interesting TED Talk by Lara Smith, a sugar scientist from University of California.
At no time in human history has our species been so bombarded by stuff designed to get us hooked. Companies compete on the very basis of creating ever more habit-forming products. And it's no different with our food. Food corporations hire scientists to engineer the most irresistible habit-forming foods. Sugar is currently their go-to ingredient. These guys have flipped the script on us. They are using the very brain imaging technologies that we use to try to find cures for addiction. Only they put people in the MRI machine and feed them Dorito chips to figure out ways to tweak the recipe to make it even more habit-forming than it already is. So here's my question to you. When you live in a world that is surrounding you on a 24/7 basis with food products scientifically engineered to be habit-forming, do you really have freedom of choice? Now, most addictive substances are actually quite safe in their natural form. Heroin comes from poppy seeds, cocaine from the coca plant, alcohol from fruits and grains. For centuries, farmers high up in the Andes Mountains have chewed coca leaves. It's a tradition. It's a mild stimulant, like drinking a cup of coffee. It helps them work longer hours and cope with the high altitudes. Probably the worst thing that can happen to you after a lifetime of chewing coca leaves is maybe you'll get bad teeth. Things do get really bad when we industrialize the coca production process. When we learned how to refine the coca plant down into its most concentrated form, a little rock of white powder. That's when the humble coca leaf becomes the lethally addictive drug we know as crack. Now, what's interesting is that up until the 20th century, cocaine was actually an innocent, domesticated white powder, just like sugar is today. People put it in everything. You could go to your drugstore and buy it in a soothing tonic. People put it in cough syrup and gave it to their kids. Coca-Cola is one of the most successful products in modern history. It was formulated in the 1880s, and the company's founders were so proud of their special recipe that they vowed never to change it. But at one time in history, the Coca-Cola Corporation was forced to change its recipe. And that was in 1903, when the political current, the tide was shifting away from cocaine, eventually to make it an illegal drug. That's when Coca-Cola took the cocaine out of the Coke. Of course, they just replaced it with a different addictive substance, namely caffeine. So here you have it, a concentrated dose of sugar combined with a concentrated dose of caffeine. Double the pleasure, double the chances we'll get hooked. The fact is, as long as food corporations aren't breaking narcotics laws, they can do pretty much whatever they want to formulate their products to make them even more habit-forming. My work takes me into San Francisco's Tenderloin district. Every big city has a place like this, right? It's a few square blocks of extreme poverty and urban blight. There's a liquor store on every corner, usually with a bunch of drug dealers hanging out in front. We have a name for places like this. We call them alcohol and drug saturated environments. Now, the Tenderloin has a program called Safe Passage. Volunteers go to the school bus and pick up children to safely walk them to their homes. They have to travel circuitous routes through the city streets to avoid all the drug dealers and liquor stores. It's like living in an obstacle course. When it comes to food, to processed food and sugar, we're all living in an obstacle course. It's on every corner, in every store, in every workplace. 74% of the foods in your grocery store have sugar added to them, stuff that doesn't even taste sweet. So why do I care about this so much? It's actually not the rising rates of obesity worldwide that keeps me up at night. It's two other very disturbing trends. And the first is the appearance of adult diseases in children. Type 2 diabetes is linked to heavy sugar consumption and especially sugary drinks. It's called adult onset diabetes because in my parents' generation, we only saw it in adults. Today, 1 out of 4 American teenagers is pre-diabetic or diabetic. Next is the appearance of whole new diseases that seem to come out of nowhere. The diagnosis non-alcoholic fatty liver disease didn't even exist until 1980. Again, a condition linked to heavy sugar consumption. By 2020, it's going to be the leading cause of liver transplantation. This is the global warming of human health. These trends are warning signs like melting icebergs and rising sea levels. They're telling us that there's something very wrong with our food environment. Our food supply is making some of us very sick. Here's the good news. The solutions to this situation are easily within our reach. Now, everybody always says, educate the public in healthy choices, but we know that doesn't work. If it worked, then why would 48% of Americans still be drinking a sugary drink or more a day? The fact is, I could say until I'm blue in the face, don't drink that stuff, it's unhealthy. You already know that. But when you live in a sugar-saturated environment, more often than not, you'll probably just reach for what's been put in front of you. And if it's a concentrated source of pleasure, a product carefully engineered with white powders to get you hooked, that puts a huge burden on you all the time to say no, and many of us don't. So what do we do about this problem? How do we fix it? The solutions are actually remarkably simple, and here's how it works. Food companies have gotten very good at seducing us towards their products in ways that we barely even notice. All of the most effective public health strategies just do the opposite. Gently nudge us away from the unhealthy stuff. It's simple. We just flip the script back. So, for example, soda companies, they intentionally keep their prices down so that we'll buy more. If we put a tax on the soda, that raises the price a little and gently nudges us away. If food corporations are barraging our children with advertisements for Captain Crunch and Cocoa Puffs, we can just take those ads off the air. If they pay grocery stores to put candy at eye level for our little children, we can put it a little higher on the shelf. And if they pay famous sports figures to promote Gatorade, we can pay them to say, I drink water. Small changes can add up to big shifts in the environment. We know this from decades of research on addictive substances. I understand we really would all like to believe that we're in charge, that we have complete freedom over what we eat. But how free can we be living in a saturated environment, one that continuously surrounds us with food products carefully engineered to get us hooked and keep us coming back for more? What's a grocery store when it's stuffed with junk food, 74% of it loaded with added sugar? All the health experts will tell you, shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. That way you can steer your way around all the junk that's in the middle. We can do so much better than this. We don't have to live in an environment that is rigged to get us fat and then blames us for the health consequences and the medical bills. We don't have to sit by and watch our children suffer from diseases of adulthood. We can re-rig this environment to make it safe. It's not about personal choice anymore. It's about our public choice. Thank you.
You just listened to an interesting TED Talk by Lara Smith from the University of California. Now let's hear a number of healthy eating advice from Dana Hannes, who is a registered dietitian from Emory University Hospital.
Hi, I'm Dana Hannes, a registered dietitian with UCLA Health. Let's talk about a very important topic that sometimes gets a bad rap: nutrition. Start your day off right with a healthy breakfast. Consider scrambled egg whites or tofu with fruit instead of a bagel or sugar-coated muffin. If you need a snack during the day, consider having Greek yogurt, hummus, or pre-cut veggies and fruit, which will give you a steady energy boost unlike cookies, a chocolate bar, or an energy drink. When you crave something sweet, consider having a piece of fruit instead. It's nature's candy. Whenever possible, eat fresh foods. And for increased benefits, buy locally grown and organic. They're fresher, tastier, and right off the farm, making them even more nutritious. Also, buying fruits and vegetables while in season costs less. Visit local farms, which offer the option to pick your own fruit and/or veggies, and make it a fun event for the whole family. Consider joining a community-supported agriculture program, where you can receive a box of in-season produce from your local farm delivered right to your home. If you don't have easy access to fresh food or to keep these foods longer, consider frozen instead of canned. Choose lean meats that have less saturated fat. Vary your protein consumption by eating seafood 2 times a week. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, eating 8 ounces of seafood per week may help reduce the risk of heart disease. Reduce or eliminate your soda intake. Choose water instead. Remember, we eat with our eyes first. Bring some color to your plate to make your meals more interesting. Enjoy dark green vegetables such as broccoli, romaine lettuce, and spinach, as well as bright red and orange foods such as red peppers, pumpkin, sweet potatoes, and juicy tomatoes. Whether staying in or eating out, choose grilled or baked foods, which are lower in saturated fat and calories than fried or breaded foods. Enjoy your food, but reduce portions. Many times, just serving your meal on a smaller plate will help you reduce your portion size. Just making a few conscious choices about what and how you eat is all you need to get started.
That was a YouTube clip on healthy eating advice from Dana Hannes, who is a registered dietitian at Emory University Hospital.
That was Sana's on healthy eating and good nutrition here on A Sound Constitution, checking in with your checkup. So how well did you guys do? Let us know on Facebook and any comments you have on the show. Thank you for listening.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. We encourage you to reach out to your healthcare provider for more information. As always, check out our Facebook page for resources for today's show. Every episode is uploaded to our YouTube channel if you'd like to hear it again.
If there are any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, let us know by email at asoundconstitution@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to A Sound Constitution on CHLY 101.7 FM.